In this episode of CNBC Titans, Herb Kelleher has a dream, an airline for the masses.
Taking an airline, fighting all the odds. He outworked them, he outdared them.
In the beginning, his obscure Texas airline is quirky.
We put our flight attendants in hot pants and go-go boots.
But Kelleher builds Southwest Airlines into a giant through unconventional leadership.
Think small and act small and we'll get bigger.
He's a fierce competitor. He's eccentric and he's just fun-loving and he's constantly thinking, how do we better serve those customers?
Herb Kelleher is a man on a mission, giving Americans the freedom to fly.
He changed the world. People today can afford to fly that never could afford to fly before.
On any given day, Southwest Airlines flies more than 250,000 passengers around the U.S. That makes this Dallas-based airline the biggest in the country in terms of passengers flown. Southwest has revolutionized the airline industry with its low fares, no-frills service, and easygoing in-flight attitude.
We know you're ready to get to new places. Open up the bins, put away your suitcases.
It's very easy for the public to understand what Southwest is all about. And that's part of the charm of Southwest. When you mention Southwest to somebody who is flying, they know exactly what they're going to get with Southwest. Great service, consistent service, and we're going to get you to your destination, perhaps with a smile on your face.
The heart and soul of Southwest Airlines is Herb Kelleher, the co-founder and former CEO. He's larger than life. And a little bit of a ham.
Somebody's got to lose! Yeah!
I think I overtrained. I went up the stairs the other day.
And at Southwest headquarters in Dallas, Herb Kelleher is treated like a rock star.
If you think I'm a rock star, you need to get out more.
I don't think I'm...
Literally, when he walks into a room, he draws excitement. Just his personality alone just brings out the excitement in people.
It's good seeing you, young man. It's a pleasure. Lauren! Welcome to the family.
Thank you.
You can't help but love him. And he's the type of boss that every boss should want to be like.
Perfect.
Thank you. Great to be with you, gang. Thanks for your...
Though Kelleher retired in 2001, he keeps an office at Southwest and often gives pep talks to Southwest managers.
Welcome, Herb, to class, y'all.
Hey, gang. Great to be with you.
A lot of them.
Whenever Kelleher speaks about Southwest, he defines the airline's mission. He calls it democratizing the skies, one low fare at a time. Kelleher notes that when Southwest started flying in 1971, only about half of the American public had ever flown in a jet.
It wasn't because people didn't want to fly. They simply, under federal regulation, couldn't afford to fly.
Today, thanks in part to lower fares started by Southwest, 85% of Americans have flown.
We set out to free the American people to fly, and it's been an enormous success thanks to all of you.
How you doing today?
Good, sir.
Thanks for choosing Southwest.
In the airline industry, it's called the Southwest effect. When Southwest enters a market, fares drop and more passengers take to the skies.
Every place we've gone, traffic just multiplies like rabbits because there's that latent demand. People could not surmount the cost barrier to fly. Well, we moved that barrier way down.
The man with the Texas swagger begins life in Haddon Heights, New Jersey, a suburb of Philadelphia. Growing up, Kelleher's biggest influence is his mother, who, like Herb, has a boundless curiosity.
She was interested in all facets of life. It didn't matter what the subject was. Business, yes. Politics, yes. Philosophy, yes. You name it.
The love of learning instilled by his mother serves Kelleher well at Wesleyan University, where he studies English literature, and then New York University Law School. Years later, when Kelleher found Southwest, his mother's influence is felt again.
I'll never forget, she told me, always remember, son, the title and position in and of themselves are nothing.
He doesn't see a janitor or a pilot, a flight attendant or a Supreme Court judge. That's just not the way Herb thinks, which I think is, incredibly remarkable. And Herb has this love for people and this impassioned curiosity that says, there isn't anybody I can't learn from, and there isn't anybody I really can enjoy.
The story of Southwest Airlines begins in the 1960s, when Kelleher, a lawyer with a young family in New Jersey, decides to pick up and move to San Antonio, Texas, a place he believes has a freewheeling, pro-business environment.
And I said, because I want to start things, and I think Texas is more wide open, and I'd like to get something started if I could.
Opportunity knocks when his friend, Rollin King, calls a meeting.
Rollin and I used to go over to the St. Anthony Club at the St. Anthony Hotel to have a few pops, to inspire creativity.
King, who runs a charter airline service, has an idea for a new airline. It will serve just 3 Texas cities: Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. The routing is simple enough to sketch on a cocktail napkin, and the idea for Southwest Airlines is born.
So I've always told everybody, well, you really couldn't see the lines anymore because of the watermarks.
The year is 1967, and the low-fare airline that's dreamed up on a cocktail napkin will have to compete against giants, including Dallas-based Braniff Airways.
The Holy Spirit is up and running at
Braniff's cabins are luxurious. Its flight attendants wear designer clothes, and its fares, Kelleher says, are sky high.
What inspired it was that there was such a great opportunity, because the competition at that time was not very good.
We wanted to sort of open up the skies of America, and become really the common man's airline.
Kelleher and King raised $500,000 in seed money and hunkered down for a drawn-out legal battle. In the 1960s, the airline industry is heavily regulated. The U.S. government decides which airlines can fly and even what they can charge. Kelleher has to show the government that the market can support another airline. Kelleher will go toe-to-toe against legacy airlines, such as Braniff.
So they came after Southwest with a vengeance, and they wanted to squash them before they ever got off the ground. Braniff would have their 5 lawyers, and Texas International would have their 5 or 6 lawyers, and Continental the same, and then there'd be Herb.
The campaign takes almost all of his time and all of Southwest's money. By January 1971, the company has a paltry $142 in the bank.
We just ran out of money because they just kept going and going and going. They were trying to bleed us to death, and they almost did.
They were not going to wear him out, and he was not going to quit, and he was not going to give up or give in. And they underestimated this man because his purpose was bigger than him. He wanted to democratize the skies.
The tide is starting to turn, and later that same year, the Texas Aeronautical Board clears Southwest for takeoff. On June 18, 1971, Southwest has its first flight, a 55-minute jaunt from Houston to Dallas. But in the first year, Southwest's flights are usually empty. That's because, as with any new product, Southwest's low-fare short-haul model requires people to reconsider their habits.
If you're totally focused on the short-haul market, your competition is the automobile. And we had to convince people to get out of their automobiles and fly instead.
Kelleher has his work cut out for him, as a relative lets him know.
She said, well, it is the best in-flight service that I have ever received anywhere. And she was a world traveler. And I said, well, how many people were there on the airplane? She said, just me. I thought, 3 flight attendants to 1 passenger? Probably the service was pretty good.
When CNBC Titans returns, a price war threatens to ground Southwest. And Kelleher launches an intoxicating incentive program.
A flight attendant greeted you. You got on the airplane. Do you want Chivas Regal? Do you want Crown Royal? Do you want Smirnoff vodka?
And for 3 months, we became the biggest distributor of whiskey in the state of Texas.
In 1972, Herb Kelleher's big dream of a low-cost, short-haul airline is having trouble getting off the ground. Southwest Airlines has just 4 jets, and business is slow. In order to make payroll, Kelleher will have to sell one of his 4 planes.
So we decided to fly a 4-airplane schedule with 3 airplanes. In other words, we weren't going to give up any flights. We were just going to operate with 1 fewer airplane, the same number of flights. So in order to do that, we had to have 10-minute turns at the jetway.
Southwest realized early on, the quicker that we can get a plane in, get the passengers off, clean it, get the fuel on it, get the bags loaded, get the passengers loaded, and take off, the sooner that we can do that, the sooner that we can say we're making money again.
In the 70s, most airlines, including Southwest, take up to an hour to turn around a plane. Southwest decides they'll have to do it in 10 minutes flat.
Nobody believed that it could be done. It could be done, and it was done.
The employees did it. The employees knew that it was a matter of survival. So they figured out how to do it. They literally invented this process.
If you ever look out the window at what's going on in the ground, it's like there's nobody anywhere. And then all of a sudden, everybody comes in like a beehive, boom, boom, boom. You know, the lav person's there, the fueler's there, the baggage handlers are there. They all just swarm in, bang. And the next thing you know, you're boarding the aircraft.
As soon as those passengers were getting on, the flight attendants were assisting, they were helping them. We took the tickets in the air instead of wasting time trying to do it on the ground or doing it at the gate. It was all about making it work.
The 10-minute turn becomes a selling point with customers. As Roy Spence, Southwest's ad man, explains.
So we did a spot with Herb walking down the jetway, talking about the 10-minute turn, and the door shuts in front of him and locks him out of his own plane.
The way we look at it, the quicker you're in the air, the quicker you get where you're going.
And he looks over and he knocks on Herb here, and they wouldn't open it.
Kelleher here.
That was the sign, if you're late, we're not even going to open it for the chairman.
The 10-minute turn brings Southwest into the black. 1973 marks its first year of profitability, starting a string of 38 straight years of profits and counting that's unmatched in the airline industry.
Time is money, and Southwest picked up on that long before others.
Word is spreading. Southwest is inexpensive, on time, and its people are friendly.
Look at their early commercials. They were fun and they were different.
Remember what it was like before Southwest Airlines? You didn't have hostesses and hot pants. Remember?
The larger airlines came off as a little stodgy, a little stiff. Southwest came off as, hey, you're going from Dallas to Houston? Hop on board.
In the 70s, Southwest flight attendant uniforms are something out of Austin Powers. Hot pants and go-go boots.
Comfortable, easy to wear, easy to wash, but the boots were killers. Those boots killed our feet, killed them.
The uniform seems to say, don't take yourself too seriously, and give service with a smile.
I'm a people person, and you need to be a people person for this business. We had them for 45, 50 minutes, and they always wanted to come back.
When people flew Southwest, they had a great experience. And word of mouth really started to take off. People were saying, if you're going someplace and you want to hop on a flight at a low price, take Southwest.
But dark clouds are gathering. Southwest's biggest competitor, Braniff, starts a price war on flights between Dallas and Houston.
Southwest fare was $26. Braniff cut it in half to $13. $13 was an interesting price point.
The fare is well below cost. If the fledgling airline matches that price, they'll go belly up.
So Southwest truly was between the proverbial rock and the hard place. It could match Braniff's fare of $13 and go out of business, or it could not match Braniff's fare and go out of business. What to do?
Kelleher and other Southwest executives come up with a brilliant plan to gin up sales.
If you will fly on us and pay the full fare, then we will give you a bottle of, I think it was scotch.
A flight attendant greeted you, you got on the airplane, you want Chivas Regal, you want Crown Royal, you want Smirnoff vodka.
And for 3 months, we became the biggest distributor of whiskey in the state of Texas.
The bottles cost less than $13, so Southwest makes a profit. And the airline's core customer, a businessman with an expense account, is happy to get a free bottle of booze courtesy of his company.
It was amazing the number of people who said, I think I'll pay the $26.
And we started getting letters of complaint from wives to say, you've got to come up with another premium. My closet is filled with whatever it was, Jack Daniels or what have you.
By doing the unexpected, Kelleher and Southwest win the fare war. A defeated Braniff eventually pulls out of Houston's Hobby Airport.
If anything, it just made Southwest famous. All the publicity was going our way, and they weren't getting the passengers.
In 1978, President Jimmy Carter signs airline deregulation into law.
Competition has already helped both consumers and the industry. It has brought lower fares, more passengers, and higher profits.
Now the markets, not government, will have control over airline fares and routes. The next year, Southwest makes its first interstate flight. It's a short one, just a few hundred miles to New Orleans. Kelleher wants to spread his wings, but at a reasonable pace.
This is the discipline of Southwest Airlines. Here's deregulation. We could have gone out and gotten huge airplanes, flown nonstop from New York to Los Angeles. You know what we decided? We're going to do exactly the same thing that we're doing now on an interstate basis. We're going to be a low fare, primarily short haul, point-to-point carrier, because we know how to do that.
The old guard airlines have trouble keeping pace in this more competitive environment. By 1982, Braniff, Southwest's old rival, is out of business after 54 years of flying.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't enjoy it at all. And you know how I analogized it? The romantic battle between two battleships at sea. You know, and one of them is holed and is going down, but the people in the other battleship don't rejoice about it. They're kind of sad in a way, and I was that way about Braniff, really.
Nevertheless, it marks a new order in the world of American aviation. When Titans returns, Kelleher settles a score with a high-stakes arm wrestling match. But first, never politically correct, the straight-talking Kelleher turns conventional wisdom on its head.
That was a mantra in those days. The customer is always right. I said, that's the biggest bunch of baloney if you have any respect for the people that work for you.
In 1982, Herb Kelleher, the co-founder and chairman of Southwest Airlines, takes over day-to-day operations and becomes company CEO. With his hands on the throttle, Kelleher expands service into new cities. That year, Southwest breaks into Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. 3 years later, Southwest plants its flag in the Midwest with the addition of Chicago and St. Louis. 1989 marks the first year Southwest makes $1 billion in revenue, and it never looks back.
And as Southwest was growing, it took on a life of its own. And Herb he was kind of like a gardener. He planted the seed, he tended the garden early on, and then it took off.
It seems that wherever Kelleher goes, he's treated like a guru. People want to know the secret of his success. His answer surprises a lot of people. Southwest's workforce is more than 80% unionized, and the industry as a whole has had historically tense relations between labor and management. But Herb Kelleher says Southwest employees are more important than their customers.
I pronounced, and I took a lot of heat for this, that the customer was not always right. And that was a mantra in those days. The customer is always right. And I said, that's the biggest bunch of baloney if you have any respect for the people that work for you. You know, if one of our passengers, as actually happened, hit a customer service agent over the head with a stanchion, am I supposed to say, oh, well, that was exactly the right thing to do. Here's another stanchion, courtesy of Southwest Airlines, so you can give her another whack. I mean, that was so silly.
It's the kind of statement that makes employees stand up and cheer.
This company is one of these companies that once you get in there, you better stay. You better not let it go. Cash, we can only accept a major credit, debit card, or flight coupon. We also
C.J. Bostic has been a Southwest flight attendant since 1972. She says she can afford to retire, but says she'd rather work.
Because I love it. Because I want to be here. Because I have a choice. The company makes me happy. People I work with make me happy because they become a part of your life, your family. And it all started with her being that way.
What I said basically was your employees come first. And if you take care of them and treat them right, they treat your customers with warmth, hospitality, and welcome. And the customers come back, and that makes the shareholders happy. You know, it's a righteous circle.
Happy birthday to you.
Kelleher always seems to be having fun. And he wants his employees to have fun too.
He said, look, we're going to take safety seriously. We're going to take the competition seriously. Let's just not take ourselves all that serious. Now, there's lots of CEOs that espouse great platitudes about idealistic principles that they think are important. But Herb lives it.
In corporate America, I mean, come on, think about it. How many people say, we want you to have a fun-loving attitude every day? Well, Herb doesn't know any other way.
When a small airline maintenance company accuses Southwest of stealing its slogan, just plain smart, Kelleher suggests he and the other CEO, Kurt Herwald of Stevens Aviation, settled the score by arm wrestling.
They're both pulling like crazy.
Herb loses.
The man.
I think I overtrained. I went up the stairs the other day.
But the companies agree they can both use the slogan. Some of the money they save in legal fees is given to charity.
And $5,000 to the Cleveland Ronald McDonald House on behalf of Southwest Airlines.
In 1998, Fortune magazine named Southwest #1 in its annual list of the best companies to work for. Kelleher talks to the Today Show.
Herb, good morning. Congratulations.
Good morning, Ann. Thank you. I'm absolutely thrilled. It's a magnificent tribute to the excellence of our people.
You run a company that's different from other companies. What inspired you to do that?
We said hire people, let them be themselves, let them enjoy themselves on the job.
Southwest employees take that advice and run with it.
Bright light city, gonna set my soul on fire.
This Las Vegas-based flight attendant channels the king of rock and roll.
All right, thank you very much, folks.
Flight attendant Dave Holmes turns the public safety announcement into a rap.
This is Flight 372 on SWA. The flight attendants on board serving you today. Michelle in the middle. Take two! I'm nervous. I usually don't get filmed.
Some customers respond to Southwest with a devotion that borders on the fanatical. Holly and Tim Clan fly Southwest nearly every weekend just for fun.
Some people on the weekends go to a movie and dinner. Well, we can fly somewhere and it's probably going to cost about the same. So that's just what we do. We travel.
They fly so much that their son, less than 2 years old at the time of this interview, has already flown 143 flights.
We even had his first birthday party on the airplane. We took 150 cupcakes and passed them out to all the passengers and crew and had a party.
The Clans say the Southwest spirit is a major reason they pick this airline over any other.
You don't hear the flight attendants while they're on their breaks or when they're not serving drinks. You don't hear them talk about how they hate their job or how they're looking for a job. They don't think that they're working, they're having fun.
But peel back the veneer and you'll find that Kelleher instills a tough-as-nails discipline. Southwest historically flies just one type of plane, the rough and ready Boeing 737. Sticking with one plane saves money, as pilots and maintenance crews don't have to learn new systems. Southwest has no first-class cabin, no meals, and no in-flight entertainment.
They're a good, consistent airline that primarily does what they say they're going to do, get you there safely on time with your underwear. They're good at delivering what they promise, and that what gives them loyalty.
It's similar to McDonald's. People go to McDonald's because they like McDonald's and they consistently deliver what people are expecting.
To be profitable, the low-fare airline must keep operating costs as low as possible.
As we celebrate 30 years with Southwest Airlines, which is unheard of.
Roy Spence with Southwest's advertising firm says Kelleher is stubborn about never serving meals in flight.
I said, Herb, you know, our passengers are kind of passing out from hunger. We really need to start feeding them something on these planes.
In addition to the bag of peanuts that's standard on Southwest, Spence suggests serving candy bars.
He said, that's a really great idea. Roy, do you know the difference in the price between a Snickers bar and a bag of peanuts? And I went, no. And he said, well, I do. And whatever, 38 cents. Now, do you know how many passengers we fly every year?
Kelleher said they'll stick with peanuts, since candy bars will cost the airline millions.
And he said, now, if they start to pass out, we'll give them 2 bags of peanuts.
The moral of the story? Pinching pennies is not a virtue in and of itself. But it is if it serves Southwest's mission, keeping costs low so it can keep fares low.
Herb invested in the 4 Ps. Planes, that's good. People, pilots, and peanuts. And if it did not improve those things, it just didn't fit the purpose of the airline. So I didn't bring up Snickers anymore after that.
Southwest's history so far may seem like a non-stop joyride. But that's about to change. When CNBC Titans returns, history shows that many airlines have gone from dominant to dinosaur. Will Southwest stay lean and mean?
Think small and act small and we'll get bigger. Think big and act big and we'll get smaller.
By 1990, Southwest Airlines is flying for nearly 20 years. The airline that's conceived on a cocktail napkin in a San Antonio bar is now an industry giant with more than $1 billion in annual revenue. By some estimates, Kelleher has a personal net worth of at least $86 million. But far from being satisfied, Southwest's founder is worried.
I was concerned about complacency and cockiness setting in.
Kelleher knows how to play the role of the underdog. But now his airline is one of the top dogs, and he's not entirely comfortable in this new role.
Think small and act small and we'll get bigger. Think big and act big and we'll get smaller.
The airline industry has always been an industry where the new players threaten the older players. Look at the history of airline business. Eastern Airlines, gone. Braniff, gone. Pan Am, gone. And Southwest Airlines in the 90s found itself being targeted.
AirTran, JetBlue, Frontier Airlines, and several others are now competing to be the #1 low-fare airline.
New competitors started flying, and they started saying, we're going to offer live TV, we're going to offer a different experience, we're going to be as good as Southwest, if not better.
The way we got through all the crisis was leadership at the top, always anchoring us back and saying, we are not like that.
Instead of panicking, instead of saying, well, we have to be everything these new competitors are, Southwest said, you know what? We're just going to do what we do and do it well. And that was the advantage. The customer never had to re-identify with Southwest. The customer always knew this is what Southwest is about. And that's how Southwest was able to answer the competition.
In 1994, Fortune magazine names Herb Kelleher CEO of the Year, as does Chief Executive magazine. Kelleher leaves on a high note, stepping down as CEO in June of 2001, with revenue at an all-time high.
35 years.
But no one expects what will happen just 3 months later, when terrorists turn airplanes into missiles and claim nearly 3,000 lives.
The questions have to be asked, was this purely an accident or could this have been an intentional act?
On the morning of September 11th, 2001, Southwest executives gather in a war room.
It was really harrowing because nobody knew what the follow-up might be. All the airplanes were put on the ground.
The only thing we knew for sure is that we didn't have any idea what was going to happen next.
It takes a few hours to track down every flight, every passenger, every employee. But when it's all done, they're all safe. Thousands of passengers, however, are stranded.
Of course, we had airplanes all over the country. In many cases, we had airplanes that were directed to land at airports that we don't serve.
One of these flights is stranded in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The passengers are unloaded and taken to the train station. But about 20 passengers don't have enough money to pay for a ticket. The captain, Terry Taylor, reaches into his own pocket and spends $4,000 to buy 22 passengers tickets home.
They drove down and we swiped the old credit card through the machine for every passenger, and they got on the train and were on their way.
Captain Taylor is later reimbursed in full.
Now you go back to that day and ask yourself, what was most important to you when you knew that our country was under terrorist attack? You wanted to be next to your loved ones.
Back in Dallas, in the war room, no one knows when planes will be flying again over America.
Our industry was shut down for 3 days, and with conference calls with the federal government every other hour, we didn't know when we would be up and running, whether we would run out of cash.
On the afternoon of 9/11, even in the face of unprecedented uncertainty, Southwest leadership makes a bold decision.
We said no layoffs at Southwest Airlines. We don't know what's coming, but layoffs will not be a consequence of it.
Southwest has never had a layoff in its history, and it's not about to start. Southwest also pledges not to cut a single route. The decision is in sharp contrast to the rest of the airline industry. Overall, an astonishing 140,000 workers lose their jobs after 9/11. But Southwest is the only airline in America that, after the attacks, cuts neither service nor employees.
We were the airline you could count on to keep the flight, to keep the service, to keep commerce flowing, and to take care of our people. We're not just this fun-loving little Texas airline anymore. We truly are a company that seeks to do the right thing.
Coming up on CNBC Titans, who can follow in Herb Kelleher's footsteps? Talk about a tough act to follow. Herb Kelleher grows Southwest from a tiny carrier with just 3 jets to America's most profitable airline. He's respected by fellow CEOs and worshipped by many of his employees.
Thank you.
With his charisma and unique brand of leadership, he's hard to replace.
But I always say, you know, the culture of Southwest Airlines is so strong that if you got somebody in there that tried to suppress it, they'd be overthrown. And fortunately, with Gary Kelly, you don't have to worry about that in any way, shape, or form. I would like to personally thank Gary Kelly.
But thank you, sir.
In July 2004, Gary Kelly assumes the mantle of Southwest CEO.
This is my 6th year as CEO, but Herb still has a touch. He still has a presence.
So far, Kelly seems to be asking the question, what would Herb do? And coming up with the right answer. Consider Southwest's recent campaign, Bags Fly Free. Southwest is one of the first airlines to recognize just how fed up flyers are with extra fees. Kelly sees an opportunity to capitalize on this frustration by doing something completely different than his competitors.
Hidden fees and nickel and diming customers is just not what we stand for.
At first, the Bags Fly Free policy is hammered by airline analysts. They say it's a bad idea to walk away from almost $500 million a year in potential revenue from baggage fees. But Southwest challenges the herd mentality.
I've always said that if it's common, it's not wisdom, and if it's wisdom, it's not common.
Kelly says the $500 million in baggage fees is more than offset by an increase in market share.
Now you look at the share shift that we've seen. The shift in market share is worth close to $1 billion by itself. Was it all because of Bags Fly Free? I can't imagine that it was. But we have never been held in higher esteem by our customers.
Kelly's tenure hasn't been without problems, however. In 2009, the FAA fined Southwest $7.5 million for flying 46 jets past deadlines for mandatory safety inspections. Later that year, an 18-inch hole opens up in the fuselage of a Southwest jet in mid-flight, forcing an emergency landing. Less than 2 years later, on April 1st, 2011, another rupture on a Southwest jet from Phoenix bound for Sacramento. Stunned passengers can see the sky through a 5-foot hole, and the cabin depressurizes at 36,000 feet.
When we could see daylight out of the plane, you always think of people getting sucked out of the airplanes when there's a hole in it, and it was really scary.
The plane lands safely in Yuma, Arizona, and no one is seriously injured. But an investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board discovers small cracks along rivets in the plane's aluminum skin.
The skin fracture, the fracture area is 5 feet by 1 foot wide, and we have clear evidence that the skin separated at the lower rivet line.
The incident causes Southwest to voluntarily cancel 300 flights and ground 79 planes for inspection.
Of the inspections that we did, we found nothing remotely close to the airplane that was in Flight 812. We did find some minute damage to the skin on 4 of the aircraft, as I recall. So all that has been repaired, which is a very routine procedure for us. At this point, it's very fair to say that that incident is isolated to that one aircraft.
Despite this incident, Southwest has never had a passenger fatality, and it remains financially successful. 2010 marks its unprecedented streak of 38 straight years of profitability.
You look at it and you go, wait, I thought this was a recession, but it was our people. We had the best on-time performance that we've had in years, and thank goodness we didn't lay off employees because we need them. We need our employees to make those things happen.
Here's a toast to our future, to bringing two great airlines together, and one love, baby.
In 2011, Southwest merges with low-cost airline AirTran. That brings Southwest into the nation's busiest airport.
Hello, Atlanta!
And it gives it a much bigger footprint in the Northeast, especially at New York's LaGuardia Airport.
From an economic perspective, there is very little overlap of the AirTran Southwest route systems. So it provides for a wonderful expansion and brings critical new markets, like Atlanta is just one example. So that was definitely a plus.
When asked his greatest accomplishment, Kelleher, at 80 years old, pointed to one fact.
I love freedom.
When he started Southwest Airlines, fewer than half of Americans traveled by plane. Today, more than 4 out of 5 fly.
That's why for a while we had the signature line, a symbol of freedom, because we wanted everybody at Southwest Airlines to understand the societal good that they were accomplishing by freeing up people to travel.
It's what Kelleher loves to talk about whenever he addresses the troops, Southwest managers.
The letters I always enjoyed the most were the one like the grandmother that wrote to me and said that she could afford to go to her grandson's graduation from naval training in San Diego because of Southwest Airlines.
I think everybody needs to have that from a motivational standpoint so that they feel that they're doing something that gives them a greater reach than they otherwise would have had, perhaps. That they were involved in a cause instead of just a business.
He changed the world. People today can afford to fly that never could afford to fly before.
I can't tell you what a thrill it would give me being on a Southwest Airlines airplane going someplace when my seatmate would say to me, you know, this is the first time I've flown. And I said, that's what we're about, democratizing the skies of America.